Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Both sides like to start on time. I'm about 2.5 minutes late, so we're gonna get started for sure. Welcome back to Nash County. Appreciate all of you being here today. I again will say how important these meetings have been, and I think they're serving the purpose that we all anticipated they would up front, and I do hope we continue having them moving forward. And with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Lamb, when he gets through discussing, are you ready? Mm-hmm. We're on agenda item number 1, and that's welcome, and this is your home, sir. I'll let you welcome us.
Well, thank y'all for all being here today. We enjoyed last night. We went up to Swift Creek and thought it was a very good meeting. And I think there were 8 members of your board and 5 members of our board, so I think it just shows the interest in among our elected folks on the new school, potential for a new school. And again, thank y'all for being here, and look forward to having a good meeting. Thank you.
Could I just again reiterate and thank you for having us to your facility, and we look forward to this committee going forward. And I think that our presence last evening showed our commitment to our community, because both sides, the funding and those making decisions, were there to hear the concerns from the people in that community. And I'm glad that we have scheduled additional, and I'm sure that some of those individuals will come to some of the other forums to find out exactly what we have to say. And I think that as we go through this process, we want to make sure that both sides remain transparent. There's nothing that anyone is trying to hide or trying to circumvent anything. We just want to make sure that we are addressing the community's concerns, and that we are focusing in on what is best for children. And there is a process that we're going to have to go through, and it doesn't just happen overnight. I could tell from some of their concerns with the buses and what time the children are going to get on, like it was going to happen tomorrow. But I did a walkthrough to that school before people got there, and some of the plugs had to have a tape on it, so nobody plugs in, because you will get shocked being there. And the principal there, she's coming from a technology school to a school with limited, that when you're playing music, the music will just cut off because it's cloudy outside. So that the community will know that we're trying to get a state-of-the-art school for our children. It's going to take time, and it's going to take finances to do it. And I also want to make sure, and as Commissioner Robbie said last night, the focus of this committee from the beginning was on finance and facilities. Finance and facilities. However, as I look at this agenda, we've gone further than that. It says future plans for IB program. We as a board, we know nothing about that. This has not been presented to us by our staff. The staff's not aware of it. So how that got on here, I have no idea.
I will explain that when I get to it. I
Please
asked
do.
that it be put on there.
Okay, but that is not facilities, because the people that signed up to be on this committee, focus committee, came on this committee for finance and facilities. Everything that we have, I want to thank Dr. Hollingsworth. It is on the internet. Everybody reads it, anything you need to know. And also, I think that when we are talking about our decisions on children's and retentions, et cetera, we need to not just look at those tests, but we need to look where these children are coming from. And that's our job for us to do. Now, we don't come in your meetings telling you what to do. And I'm not saying you're not telling us what to do, but sometimes it feels like we're trying to hide something. But I want to assure all of the commissioners here that we're being transparent. We are sharing everything that we get. You know how the state works with us. For example, we tried to do city schools. We wrote the grant, everything, we're ready to go. Then they said, yes, you can do it, but you don't have any money to give us to do it with. So what do? I commend our superintendent for going forward to trying to get additional funds for us to provide these programs. But I just want to say that I hope that this committee, this ad hoc committee, that Mr. Dahl, Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Bill Sharp, he's not here, Ms. Bullock and myself, we signed up because we knew that we would be working with you on facilities and finance. So in my opening remarks, I just want to include that so that it didn't get lost somewhere down here. Thank you.
All right, I'm not gonna say I fully understand everything you said, but with your permission, I'd like to call you and maybe sit down and meet with you, and you and I have a dialogue on some of the things you said, because I really want to understand exactly what you mean.
Right,
And I
okay,
think as I move
that's
through-
very important that the
Okay.
two of us do that. Thank
Okay.
you.
I
Because
would
I
agree.
want to be transparent with you and you be
Sure.
transparent with me.
That's fair enough. Moving on down the agenda, the next item that we had, we always have done in the past, an update of Williford School. I think that was just something that both of our boards were very concerned about, Ms. Edge, and I think we pretty much understand what we did. I'm just wondering how we've been started back, not too terribly long ago. I'm just wondering how that's going and moving forward. Did we do the right thing? I hope we did, and I feel like y'all know that, we don't know that. I will just say, Ms. Edge, if we want to restrict any item that we don't want to talk about, we can certainly do that, but I think when you see we move through the agenda, you'll see that we like to use this and would be, requesting permission to use this. When we hear concerns as commissioners through the community, I would like to be able to, for us to discuss those in meetings like this, so we'll know what y'all doing, y'all know what we're doing, and we can better answer the constituents we have, which are all the same group of constituents,
But maybe if the two of us talk
Okay.
first to get it, so it doesn't get out of hand
Okay.
and misunderstood.
I understand. And so I'll let you decide how you want to do the update on Williford School.
Madam Chair. Thank you all for this opportunity. As we've been through quite a journey with Williford Elementary School. If you all recall, it was identified for consideration for ISD, the Innovation School District. And as a result of that, we engaged in a year-long exploration and research of some of the persistent barriers to not only Williford, but that surrounding community. Where we landed after much diligence from the Board of Education and their fundamental support is we have embedded a school-based health clinic at Williford Elementary. We have changed the grade span. It has been reconstituted to be a pre-K through 2 school. It was formerly pre-K through 5. We've increased the presence of pre-K professionals and support. We now have 7 pre-K classrooms focused on site. Along with those classrooms, we have the support professionals who are experts in early literacy. One of the persistent challenges was children were leaving having challenges in literacy skills. There's a volumes of research that support if you are less than fluent as a reader at 3rd grade, you're going to struggle for the rest of your life academically. And it's really a much narrower window. It's really fluency at the end of 1st grade, which is essential for academic success. So that was a part of our design. We're very pleased with the progress. OIC is a fundamental partner in terms of providing on-site mental health care, physical health care, and a conduit for dental screenings and health on-site. We are phasing those services in, but they have a strong footprint to date. October 30th, we will have, is that the correct date?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hollingsworth, we will have a community presentation for the full functioning services. We look forward, and those will be open to the public. So the progress has been monumental. We're very pleased. It's already having an impact, and we'll be reporting out in greater detail at future meetings. I want to talk about a recent development. Williford was again identified for consideration for ISD. They've distilled it down to 6 potential schools, I believe. As the process goes, there's an initial visit from the ISD superintendent. That person was just named. Dr. Hall transitioned to a deputy at North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, but we were visited by Dr. Hall and the newly appointed ISD superintendent, Miss Letisa Allen. That visit consisted of the chair, Miss Ann Edge, myself, Dr. Hall, and the ISD superintendent. The presentation of the transformation efforts was conducted by Dr. Alston, the principal of Williford. Dr. Alston did an expert job in articulating the multiple partnerships we have now in place, the reconstruction of the school, and the elements of that design. Where we landed, the identification for ISD is driven by school performance grades, the bottom 5%, if part or whole of grades K through 5 are present, if the school did not exceed growth, and if the school did not adopt a reform model. Technically, Williford was appropriately selected, but the data on which they based that selection was 3-5 data. That school no longer exists. So when you look at Williford now being a pre-K2, we're the only pre-K2 under consideration. But more importantly, when you talk about reform models, after we articulated what we have in place, fully functioning through robust partnerships, we contend and promote a very healthy argument that Williford is among the most robust reform models in the state. So we're waiting to see the next iteration of that process. Dr. Hall engaged in deliberate dialogue with us. We had a healthy exchange. The next steps are October 15th. He will notify districts that he plans to take for a final recommendation to the state board in November. So we are waiting to see. Williford has engaged in many of the parts of the process, so we will not get another visit for a CNA. That's a comprehensive needs assessment. So we're in wait and see mode. I feel that there's a great deal of promise that will be removed from consideration when you look at the impact that we're having with the transformation efforts driven by the district.
Dr. Jeffries, could you also speak to the fact that the progress that Williford made brought them very, very close to being removed from that list altogether?
Yes, ma'am. As you're aware, the reconciling of the scores is a very deliberate process, and the initial reporting, the first 2 rounds of reporting, Williford was identified as having met the growth standards. After the last round of cleaning and reviews of the data, they missed by 0.3 of a point by having met growth, but they made 14 points worth of growth in what I would contend is the most difficult year that a school can endure. They had the cloud of ISD hanging over them all year. We had several disruptors. We had 2 teachers abandon ship because they were worried about their future. But even with those challenges, they were able to generate 14 points worth of growth. It's very commendable to the professionals at that school.
All right. Anything else on that, Ms. Edge?
No, he covered it pretty
Okay,
good.
all right.
It was about a 2-hour meeting, so we covered a lot.
I'm sure. The next item on the agenda is an update on early college that we do each time as well, Ms. Edge.
Mr. Miller?
Sure, Mr. Davis is not here. As of right now, we are ahead of schedule. Painting is being done in the classrooms, and the sheetrock is being put up in the administrative area right now. So Mr. Davis feels that we are ahead of schedule with early college at this point in time.
And our schedule is, if I recall, if you could remind me, is to go back in it when we come back after Christmas.
I believe it was January of
sometime.
next year, so I think we're still on target for that.
Any thoughts, questions on that? All right, moving right along, the next item was an update on the new Northern Nash Elementary School. The grant, first of all, Ms. Edge, if you want to have that addressed, I know we did get it turned in.
Well, it was turned in on time, and we appreciate the collaboration that went forth for us to get that through. Some of the channels that we thought we might be able to go through, they didn't actually work out, but I thought with consistency and transparency, we worked well together to get that through. And I thank all of those who worked behind the scenes to work on the grant writing to get it done.
Any other comments on that?
Have we gotten any feedback? We haven't got any feedback on the grant process from the state and
Not
whether
to
or
my
not.
knowledge, I sure
No,
can't
we
speak to
haven't
you.
been
The
communicated.
only thing we received is that they received our application on the
Okay.
30th, and that they will, awards will be announced by September 30th of 2018.
At least we know it's there.
Yeah, we do know it's there. And I think I told y'all once before, I would be making a visit to the person I think pretty much controls that from a political standpoint, and I do have that meeting set up next week, and I'm just going on behalf of Nash County to speak to them, the particular senator that I think has a lot to do with it, just to see what I can do to encourage him to look at us very strongly. I was told already that we had enough Tier 1 counties, as we always do, to take care of all the money they had available. Don't know exactly what that meant, but we turned ours in as a Tier 2, but made it very well known where we really were, which we were a shared tier county. But we do have an actual meeting scheduled next week to just see what we can do with that, and that's strictly from a political standpoint. Don't want you to think I'm getting in y'all's business, but I think we're all excited to do everything we can to hopefully get Nash County included in this. And if not, maybe at least get a commitment out of somebody that next year we will be, so.
But we worked on that together, so.
We did, okay, great, all right, thank you. The next item was the schedule for community meetings. Since we worked on this agenda, we certainly have that, and we have actually had one meeting. If y'all want to comment on how you thought that went, and maybe review the dates for the next two, or anything else you wish to say about those.
I'll be happy to reiterate the dates, Madam Chair, if you'd like to. We scheduled 3 town hall meetings. The first was conducted last night at Swift Creek, that was the 18th. The next 2 are scheduled for October 2nd. That will take place at Cedar Grove at 6 p.m. in the Media Center. And the last meeting will be October 16th. That will be at Red Oak Elementary in their Media Center.
I thought it was a very positive, open meeting, and people were concerned and expressing their concerns about immediate things, as I said previously, the bus routes and how the kids are going to get there, et cetera. But I think everybody that approached and everybody that did speak, the last person, he was hoping that we can find not necessarily where it's going to be, but provide the technology that our children are going to need for the 21st century.
I'm curious, did you get a chance to visit the cafeteria while you were at school last night?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Just wondering.
I didn't have dinner there.
Didn't have dinner there. Well, I actually had breakfast there one day a couple of weeks ago, and it certainly serves your students. Could it be more desirable? Of course it could be, but we get all we can get out of a building, I know that, and we're getting a lot out of the cafeteria down in the basement like it is.
Because the media center, that's really a classroom,
Yes.
where we were last night.
Right.
Because we thought we might have an overflow, but I think we had just enough room.
Mhm.
We thought we might have to go over to the auditorium.
Auditorium, right. No, I think it worked very well where we had it at. I am looking forward to the next 2. You always learn something. I heard some language that I haven't heard in many years. I heard many times what dark 30 meant when I was working in the tobacco fields. It was dark 30 in the morning, dark 30 in the evenings when we got out, but it also applies to when students get on buses, when you get off on buses too, apparently. Anything else you want to say on those meetings?
Thought it went well.
Yes, sir.
I thought it was interesting. Some of the same people talked over and over and over again. So when you looked at the questions and you see that we went back to them all, but there were nine references to the dark 30,
Yes.
to the transportation of the kids. So that tells us all,
Yeah.
county commissioners, school board, staff, that we have really, from that standpoint, from that meeting, I don't know what's going to come out of the other ones, that transportation is a real piece of the puzzle in this whole thing, and that's going to be very complicated. Like Dr. Jeffrey said, very complex. It's a complex issue.
In addition to the observation there, one observation that I observed is that there are a lot of should be factual information that they don't know. And they tend to make statements, references of other school constructions and things, and not have the reason why what was done because of need.
What is the earliest route you have now in the mornings and concluding in the afternoon? In other words, what's the earliest pickup you have right now?
I believe the earliest pickup time we have is 5:45 in the morning, and the latest drop-off for a student, and I believe it could be our early college students, is close to 5:30, 6 p.m.
But how about elementary kids?
I don't know offhand the actual elementary kids, the latest, but the latest for
So
mine-
5:45 in the morning, 5:36 in the afternoon.
and that's the early college.
Could we get the elementary piece of that and just kind of see what a bus route looks like currently? I know out in my area, I see the buses out dark 30 in the morning.
5:45 is dark 30.
In the last time that we reassigned students in our system, we had a real, and they had that burden for many years, is the Sharpsburg folks going all the way out to Southern Nash. And we remedied some of that with the like you just said, Mr. Benfield, with the high school situation and how we reconfigured all that. So that was a tough little thing for kids for a long time. You're talking about the dark 30. That was, they're going 19 miles one way and coming back one way. No matter how the crow flies in this situation, we won't have anything close to what we had for all those years.
And just to be clear, we don't publish routing information for safety purposes, so what we can provide is the tier runs, when they begin, when they end. We'll be happy to put it, but it'll be a sanitized version. We have 10,000 in ridership. It won't be a breakdown of 10,000 routes.
I don't think really that's what Mr. Outlaw meant. I think he meant.
I just wanted to clear that up, because
Sure.
you
Well,
never know what people
I
expect.
thought it was a good meeting last night, but I kind of got the impression that the community felt like that, they were going to be able to get on a bus and in 15, 20 minutes be at the school. And I know in my area, there's very early pickup. So I know if they're getting on at 5:45 in the morning, they're probably not getting to school until, what time?
Has to be around
After 7.
after 7 o'clock.
So they're on the bus over an hour in the morning already. So it's not good with what we currently have.
I think that one of the things we have to be upfront about is that when you have students living in a sparse area like we have in the outlying areas in Nash County, that it is going to take some time, longer than usual,
Sure.
for the students to get to school. And I agree, dark 30, I hadn't heard that word in years, but it's
You knew what it meant,
hard.
though, didn't you?
I'm sorry?
You knew what it meant, though,
I knew
didn't you?
exactly what it meant, yes. I remember going through dark 30. But I think we need to make sure that we impress upon our parents that We will do everything we can to limit the time on the bus, but there are going to be some issues that we cannot fix because of where the people live, and we cannot put a school in every neighborhood because we don't have enough kids in that neighborhood. So those are some realities that I think we're gonna have to face and have to talk about honestly and let them be on the table from the beginning.
Ms. Wilson?
I was just going to say, I agree with what Ms. Bullock said. Transparency is going to be the key throughout this process, and I thought she did a good job last night, Dr. Jeffries, assuring that it would be a transparent process as we move forward. Afterwards, there was something that I'll just share briefly. It was interesting, a couple parents who were quiet, who weren't saying much, walked up to a staff member afterwards and said, we were surprised there weren't more staff people here. There weren't more teachers here. So that may be something to look as we look at the other two sites, because we know how near and dear our schools are to your hearts. And they said, what we really want to know is what the teachers think. And I thought that was interesting because they trust the teachers to have the best interests of their kids. And I thought that was just an interesting observation for us as we move forward.
Has this idea, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
has this idea ever come up about cross-county attendance based on transportation? I know in the mountains, some of those kids up there in one county going to school in another county because to cut down on long hours of transportation. I wonder, has it ever been a thought about that all the way across the state?
Can I respond on that? One of the situations that occurred when we first merged was that we really looked at the transportation issue, and this was in 1993 or something, a few years ago. And one of the things that we decided, that the committees that were pulled together and the board that they pulled together just for the merger talked about when we were looking at our elementary situation, that we would have neighborhood schools for the transportation. And that's what we generally have in our elementary. Now, the middle schools were a little bit different because they were in different locations. We had to bus them a little bit more than others, especially with Southern Middle sitting where it was. And we had those kids from Sharpsburg that had to get way out there, and we had no place to send them because we were overcrowded at Edwards and at Central Middle. But the elementary was a neighborhood situation. It created some problems, and the way it was alleviated a little bit, we had year-round schools in the neighborhood. Ann, where you were principal, you were not a year-round school, but Pope was a year-round school.
No. I was a year-round
You
school.
were around school, but the other ones weren't.
Now, what happened at Baskerville? Baskerville became a K2, and Inglewood was a 3-5. So the 3-5s from Baskerville went over to Inglewood, and the K2 from Inglewood came over to Baskerville. And then Baskerville became a year-round traditional. So we had both calendars within the school. So when the year-round was out, the traditional never went out, but the traditional was always there, and then the the year-round came back in. But that's how we kind of kept the neighborhoods together. And then when it became a neighborhood school, Baskerville became a K5 school. So during all of this transition to programming and neighborhood schools, a lot of transformation had to take place within the neighborhoods. So like now, for example, at Inglewood, they have K2, and then at, what's the school down the street? Winstead, they have 3-5. So then
No,
those.
it's the other way around.
Switch
It's the other way
around,
around.
yeah, so switch around, reverse.
Yeah,
So you see, you're always going through transition to try to provide the best that you can for everyone involved.
I have another question, if I may. This discussion about travel, transportation, and all of that, and someone said last night about, well, maybe we might need to think about 2 schools. Is that something that if we are awarded this grant, would the possibility of 2 schools to alleviate this bus travel time for these young kids be an option? Is that something that we could actually consider, or is that something that is not feasible at all?
Well, I think as we look at what we're going to do, that's something to be on the table.
But I'm asking our funders.
To answer your question, your funders, as you refer to us, fully understand that this is a school.
Well,
board.
we're transparent, we know where the funds are.
Yeah, but we fully understand that those type things will be a school board decision, not a commissioner decision. But when we look at it, the way the funders look at this and any other thing that we deal with, where we are the funding agency, we've got to have a recommendation that will work. I would just say on behalf of myself personally, not as a commissioner, I can't imagine how we could build 2 elementary schools for $20 million, which is the budget that we based the grant on. We really hope we can do it less than $20 million. But of course, if we get a $10 million grant, we're gonna spend $20 million because we obligated ourselves to match it. Dollar for dollar, spends a tier 2 county. But I think that would be a difficult task. The other things that we have previously talked about is the need for us to somehow figure out a way to reduce the total number of facilities we have, because we do have, for a number of years, a shrinking population. If you look at your schools, you have a lot of room in some schools you do not. But I think as we continue to move forward, y'all are the experts on it, or the demography people are, but you know, we don't anticipate a tremendous amount of growth for a number of years, as we have so many opportunities, as I said last night, for other kinds of other parents to have other things ways they can educate their kids. Right. And that's why I think it's very important, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and my board members can chime in, that we figure out a way. We've just got to improve our schools so we are more appealing to those students that we are losing when their parents have a means or an option for them to go somewhere else. The ones in this room, we're very much advocates for public schools. I think all of us are. I personally think it's a tragedy for us to have to fund schools, charter schools, for one way that, you know, we take public money and put in them, but they don't have to follow the same set of rules. I'm just I myself came through public schools. My 3 kids came through the same school system. I currently have 3 grandchildren in school that are all in public school systems. I don't control that, but that's where they have chosen to go, and I fully support that. And I think my other 2 will also be in a public school. They're in another location, or will be soon. I think they're from Wilmington, so they have been in our area for quite about 4 weeks now, but that's great too. But we just got to find a model, and every student we lose carries money with them. We know that. And so we've got to find that model somehow where we can do it with less facilities, so we can afford to keep our facilities up the way we want to keep them up, replace them when they need to be replacing, but yet also have that money available in the county coffers on the current expense side to do as much as we can do to help y'all. So that's what we're faced against. You got to make the matrix work with the funds available.
And the thing about it, excuse me, we send our money to them, for them, and then when they get ready to send them back, they don't send the money back. They keep the money.
I hear y'all say that when I ask that question. They don't agree with that being the state, but I don't know the answer to that. Y'all know it better than I do.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That's
They
a
may
fact.
not agree with it, but that's a
That's a
fact.
fact.
Like I say, I don't know the answer to that. I've asked that question when I've heard y'all say that.
That's a fact.
And that tells me,
Excuse me, Mr. Bellflower,
Okay.
I'm gonna go by who's got the hand up first. and
I just
then
wanted,
Wayne.
Ms. Bullock's question or discussion piece about a second school. One of the things that I heard over and over again, and our board has, we don't always agree on, always agree, but in this situation, all 11 of us in our retreat has told Dr. Jeffries that we wanted this to be a transparent situation. We didn't want to make any decisions until we've had these community town hall meetings. We didn't want to do any of that. And then the staff, his staff, will bring to the board some recommendations.
Sure.
And those recommendations could be of different kind of things that we might need to do, which would include a school in the northern. It might include 2 schools, it might include renovations of, but they're gonna bring it to us, and then we'll discuss it as a board, and then we'll bring that to the table in whatever way the 2 chairs decide they wanna do that, along with the county manager and our superintendent.
Well, we fully understand our part.
Okay.
Right.
But on the other hand, we won't be able to do what y'all come up with the funds available.
Exactly.
You said you had something else, Ms.
I
Moore.
did. Thank you for your comments, because the reason I asked that question is that it came up last night. And before we allow that question to mushroom, we need to know whether there is even a possibility, so that when parents come up saying 2 schools, we already know that we have to look at that, because the funding may very well not be there for 2 schools. So we don't need to have our parents thinking that there is that possibility when we know that it more than likely is not a possibility. I think that's part of being upfront and transparent. And if we've got a budget of $20 million, and we both know that you can't build 2 schools with $20 million, then that lets me know that we ought to be talking about something else other than staying on the topic of we're gonna have 2 schools. And that was the reason I asked that question. I thank you for your honest response.
Cool. Cool thing. Mr. Belleville.
Oh, what I was gonna say is, they were talking about the money. It doesn't come back when the charter schools send. Well, I don't see how the state or anybody can compare public schools with private schools and charter schools, because they take, I'm gonna use the term, cream of the crop, and if they don't have it, they send it back to the public schools. Now, how are you gonna compare the public school when they have to educate everybody, those that, disabilities and all? And the private schools and the charter schools can pick. In most cases, they got the best students. And I have just been looking at this ever since it started, even before charter schools started. I look at the private schools too. They weren't all that better, but some put them there for different reasons. But you cannot compare fairly the public schools with these private schools, or even homeschooling. And you got a lot of parents that are doing it now. And because they're supposed to be, I think, I'm not sure of this, but anyway, I know there's some state rules they have to go through. But I don't know whether they have to be certified or not. But anyway, they have to go through it. But anyway, well, in most cases, that's a one-on-one, and you can do better with a child when you're working with them one-on-one. But I just don't see, and I stand by it, I tell anybody that you cannot compare them and say, oh, the private schools, the charter schools are doing better than our public schools. What's happening in the public schools? They got everything that's left, and the rest of them, they done pick the best.
And
Understand.
also, let us not forget that the charter schools don't have the rules that public schools have to follow, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I understand that too. But my point is that any undesirable kids at a charter school they can send them right back to
Sure, they
the
do.
regular public school.
So I
If
would-
it's a disciplinary problem, you gone. And
I
they
would
tell the parent-
caution everybody to be conscious of undesirable kids, the kids that don't,
That terminology.
and
Well, disciplinary problem,
Any-
maybe that's a better,
that,
maybe that's a
Perhaps.
better term, but
Perhaps.
they may think they're undesirable.
perhaps,
But disciplinary.
Well, there's one reporter in the room that told me more than one time you can't correct it after you say it, so I guess we need to think a little bit before we say it. And he happened to be smiling at the time.
we are not,
She was not.
we, as a school system, we do not have an adversarial posture toward charter schools. In my estimation, if you're serving a child well, we want you to do well. But the essence of this discussion started with a fundamental question. And it's really simple to reconcile. The state reconciles ADM, average daily membership, with the 20th day numbers and the 40th day numbers. And the greater of the two you're funded for. In your discussions, because you are a funder of charter schools, and I would imagine they have to be responsive to your requests as we do. Ask a couple of questions. Do you have students that are separated from your program after the 40th day? If the answer is yes, tell us how much money you have reverted to public school systems with those students. And the only reason I was so resolute is because you know when zero is zero. So that's why I can speak pretty comfortably in saying that has not, in my 3-year tenure, it hasn't happened.
All right, I'm gonna get us moving on then, to the things we might can fix, and that's probably one we may not be able to fix. The next item on the agenda, if we are through with the, community meetings, and that was a great discussion. The last thing I would say is, Dr. Jeffers, I like the idea last night that you made it very clear, and I think we need to continue doing this, that this will also potentially and most likely will include some redistricting as well. The sooner you get that word out to your parents, the more time you got to work through that as well, and I think you did a great job of that. Transparent. Wayne, you seem to be keeping notes on how many times things were said. How many times did Dr. Jeffers say transparent last night?
Just cross out right before my.
I don't keep notes on Dr. Jeffries.
Quite a few times. I think we all-
The only thing we're responsible for him is his employment, nothing else.
I really
I don't
did,
keep
you
those
said it
notes.
Many times, and I don't know what else we could do to help people understand that that's what we're doing. I wrote down, estimated date to zero in on site selection. We don't have to answer that, Dr. Jeffries. You somewhat answered that last night. Do y'all have a,
What we've been working on is about a 3 to 5 year window. When you factor in time from ground to build, about a 3-year window for that. But when you talk about us reconciling when we'll receive the funding or not, so that, I think that's a fair assumption. As some of the variables are determined, we get the funding or we do not.
Right.
We've identified a site, then that timeline will become more finite.
the only thing I'd like to add to that, and the reason I actually put it on here, is in just about everything we do grant-wise, it seems to get you a lot of points according to how ready you are to start your project. Particularly, in a recent grant that we received, which I just still can't believe we got it for our water system, but we got it for one reason, because we were ready to start that system. Plans were 80% complete. I hope we will continue, even if we don't get the grant, to move it along and get ready. We may not build it, but we need to have hopefully a site selected at some point, and I'm not here to set that timeline, but sooner the better. Site ready means that you're a lot more available to qualify for any kind of grant, because they just put a lot of emphasis on that. When they give you a grant, they want to see you spend the money, and they want to know that you're ready. And let's just all keep that in mind moving forward. And as well as selecting architects, as well as getting plans ready, even though we may not start it right then, but it's just an important piece, and our grant writer's not in here, but she tells us that all the time. We hear it at Gateway all the time, so it's just an important part to that. That's the reason I had that on there. The next thing we had was ways to fund the new school, and I just asked Mr. Lamb if he would discuss that just a little bit. And again, the board's reason for wanting to discuss this is to make sure the Board of Education knows that,
You got enough?
this is a high priority for us. We do intend to fund it. We're gonna figure out a way to fund it somehow when y'all ready to build a school, so we can be ready to fund it. So that's why I asked him to talk about that just a little bit,
Okay.
not as much as he wishes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, at the end of June, I think I mentioned at the last joint meeting that the commissioners did put aside $750,000, reserved it for this project, so it is in reserve. And so if we need to acquire land or something like that prior to the loan, we will have that in reserve. What I've got for you here is interest rates and the project cost. As you can see, we just did a over $3 million public safety radio project, and our interest rate was 3.36. Of course, that was only for 5 years, but the Fed has indicated they recently have increased rates, and they've indicated that they anticipate raising rates 2 or 3 times over the next 12 to 18 months. So whenever we're ready to move on a loan, I anticipate probably 50 basis points over what the current 15-year rate would be. So on the very top there, if we did 15-year financing, we're talking 3.65, and again, this is just an estimate. You don't know until you go to market. And in 20 years, financing just a little bit more. I've broken that down, or staff has broken that down. Our finance officer, Ms. Wood, if we get no grant money, and we borrow the money of $20 million over 15 years, the debt service for the county would be $1.74 million a year. Total cost with interest, $26,149,000. If we were able to get a 20-year loan, and I can tell you lenders, they may be more willing on a school to give 20 years, but they really prefer 10 to 15-year loans. So I don't know if this interest differentiation of 5 basis points, but we had to have some assumptions, and so we used this. And so we would have to, for 20 years, if we were able to get a 20-year loan, would be $1.42 million a year, $28,400,000 over the life of the 20 years. Now that's all new money. That's money that we don't have right now. So you know, it would be an additional amount of money to our fund balance. I mean, from our fund balance. The second scenario there assumes that we get a $20 million grant, but in getting that $10 million grant, but in getting that, we have to give up 5 years of our lottery money, which over the last 5 years has averaged $1.119 million. So if you look below there, you can see if we get the grant, we're actually going to have to pay more for the first 5 years out of pocket, because for 5 years we're going to lose that $1.19 million, $1.119 million. 936 of that goes towards Rocky Mount High School right now, that debt. So we would have to find other revenues to pay that. So for the first 5 years if we did a 15-year loan, it would cost us almost $2 million a year. And then for the final 10 years, it would be $870,000 a year. And you can see what the total cost to us would be, $18 million as opposed to $6 million for 15 years. The second scenario there, again, uses the same lottery money, and this doesn't factor any kind of growth. It comes and goes. You might have 1.2 one year and then 980,000 the next year, but it has been going up a little bit. But you can see on a 20-year loan, it would cut our debt service on the $10 million loan about $160,000 a year. So for the first 5 years, if we got a 20-year loan, we would be paying about $1.83 million in debt service. And then after 5 years, we would be paying $712,000 debt service. So when the idea of multiple projects comes along, I think these numbers indicate that it would be hard during that first 5 years to carry on, to carry additional debt. But after that 5 years, it would be more manageable because we would get that 1.11 million back that we're gonna lose from the lottery fund. So, if there's any questions, that's just a quick calculation based on assumptions. It's hard to know what's gonna be the financial markets a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever we go out for these loans. But we just wanted to give y'all, everybody, an idea of what the debt service would be under these various scenarios.
And this is a manageable debt service, as we have determined.
We and our financial advisors have determined that it is manageable. Now, our assumptions that we used were based on fixed interest and principal, not 5 years higher cost, but we believe that it would be manageable. Yes, sir. Any questions?
The debt service that we are currently on the Rocky Mount High School, when is that sunset? Is there a sunset on that?
Sure.
And I-
It better be.
yeah. Was it a 10-year or was it a 15-year, was it a 20-year? Was it?
I think,
It was a 20-year.
I think it was
I think
20
we
years.
have a long time left. It's somewhere around
Oh,
10,
long.
11 years, maybe
Okay.
more than that.
That doesn't help us then.
No, that will be along with this one.
Right, you're still gonna have to, you still have that debt service to continue.
Yeah,
That was
and,
my
and
question.
let me be clear, the debt service, for Rocky Mount High School, also, it has encumbered, I think, the Southern Nash. Didn't we put that all together?
Yeah,
In the
the
latest-
field house.
Field house.
Field
yeah.
house.
Yep.
That's part of it, but we use the lottery funds to cover the Rocky Mount High School
Okay.
piece of that.
And does that completely cover? No, no. So we started allocating 936, that's probably what we were getting at the time, and we've kept that amount that we're applying towards the Rocky Mountain debt. It actually costs more than that each year. In fact, it's almost 2 million, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. It's considerably more than the 936, but that's
Right.
what we use from lottery funds. The
Right.
rest comes from the general fund.
Any more questions on it, Ms. Bull?
This is my ignorance. I don't know about how the lottery fund works, but does it ever increase? Do we ever get an increased amount?
I can tell you what we've gotten each of the last 5 years.
So it does
It-
change?
It
we're-
changes from year to year.
We're supposed, to, as the
It's
lottery,
strictly sold on, based on how many tickets are sold in your county.
yeah.
Okay. I didn't know
Not
that.
totally that is.
No, that's part of the formula.
That's part of
Yeah,
the formula.
part of the
Okay.
formula.
But statewide is part of it as well.
But anytime you have a $500 million lottery in a year or something,
It shows up.
it shows up. We see a little spike because more people are buying
Buying.
lottery tickets.
Uh-huh.
It is tied to the total amount of sales. So assuming sales continue to increase, we should see additional lottery funds. You know, for those 3 years, we had built up a balance, about $1 million, but for 3 years, we gave an extra 400,000 for your capital needs. So that really depleted the fund balance. Just to give you an idea, the last 5 years, what we based this figure on was 1.13, 1.15, 1.06, 1.18, 1.03. So it fluctuates year to year, and it's not necessarily an upward
It's not
trend.
normally significant.
It's not
No,
there, you see
no,
that?
no.
Okay, thank you for that.
And it is tied to ADM also.
Right, that's correct. Any other thoughts on that?
One thing that, I believe, looking at, the situation in the nation and the world too, that interest rate's gonna spike up a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna stay where they are now, and it's not going down, it's gonna go up.
They've already started going up.
Yeah.
You know, we've had several rate increases in.
Another thing indicates the sooner the better off we are. Thus far, we have talked about, Mr. Edge, the point you brought at the start, we have talked about capital expenses as well as facilities. Y'all were very much also want to talk about current expenses in these meetings as well. And at this point, we are moving into that part of it. I think you maybe didn't like the way I structured it, but moving to item 5, future plan for IB program at Rocky Mountain Senior High, we're not asking you for that answer. What we want to tell you is, as commissioners, because we have discussed this, we want to do everything we can to keep the students we have and to bring more students to our system. We can all agree on that. Apparently, the person who she does happen to be with us today that runs that program, and I also saw the one that ran it before her a week or so ago. That is a very much desired program from some of our people in Nash County. And just let me say what
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
let you
say. We're not looking for any answers. We know y'all haven't discussed it. What we want to say is, it's a concern out in the community. Sometimes we may hear things that y'all don't hear. You may hear it all, I don't know. But we just want to say, we hope that it apparently is out there that Ms. Huster's gonna retire. I don't know whether she is or whether she don't, it's not, but there is a concern, and we have parents already looking at other avenues and asking questions. What am I gonna do with my child if I don't? Are they gonna go to the academy, or am I gonna send them to Virginia to school or here to school? I just think the sooner we put that rumor to bed, the better off we are, and that's all we want to say.
All I would like to say that, as these questions come to the commissioners, that commissioners, out of respect, at least direct them to the offices where this information would come. But when we as board members say, we don't know anything about this, what are you talking about? I just think to be respectful that you would direct those individuals to have their questions to go to our superintendent, who will call us together so that we can discuss it. But for us to come and see this on, we say, well, what are you talking about? We've been very transparent in everything that we're trying to do, and I have a feeling where this is coming from, because I'm hearing the same thing that you're hearing, and I think that you, okay, I'm gonna stop. I just want to, out of respect, that when these questions come to you, that you could call me or you call Dr. Jeffrey, so that we can send them to the proper staff members, so that when we come to you to answer these questions, we can answer these questions with transparency and with a full understanding and with cooperation between the two. And as we discussed when we first started, you said that the two of us would get together and discuss this, because I need to know what you're hearing and you need to know what I'm hearing. And I'm just asking that for respect, that's all.
We will do that. But
I would
let me
appreciate
look
that
at
very
the-
much, because I got several calls from people that serve on this committee. Why is that on there? And I said, we will discuss that when we get to the meeting.
Well, again, you and I are gonna have to work this out.
Yes, we gotta work this
The way I
out.
feel about it,
And I know Ms. Esther is here. I saw her back there.
And that's great, it's open to the public.
That's open to the public.
But the way I feel about these meetings, if we hear a problem, I thought our venue for these small meetings were to at least tell you what we hear. We're not looking for an answer, to let you know what's going on in the community that we hear. And if you hear things in the community that commissioners are not doing, I would certainly receive anything you would tell me here today that we can go investigate and report back to you.
Madam Chair, may I interject?
You can, sir.
Madam Chair. So this is a little bit difficult for a couple of reasons. When you're talking about personnel and retirements, as a system, we tread very lightly around ever engaging in those discussions because those discussions are a decision solely for the professional. Because we don't want to create the perception of coercion, that we are wanting to prompt retirement. It has happened. You look quizzical, but it has happened, trust me. So in this instance, I'd like to extract the staff that's present because we have 6 board members who aren't even aware we're having this discussion. So I'll use the example of myself. I was an international baccalaureate principal at West Charlotte High School. A week into the job, my IB coordinator came in and said that, Mr. Jeffries at the time, I've had enough, sir. I'm gonna put in for she had 35 years. So it was a difficult thing, but International Baccalaureate is built to accommodate such transitions. So for me at that time, it was immediately identifying staff who had the appropriate IB certifications to transition into the role of coordinator. I had help from the IB administrative offices in doing that. We built the contingency plan with district leadership, IB leadership, and the principal. We then identified a professional, helped them transition into the role, secure the IB certification, and I want to share that this is not unique to Rocky Mount High School. This happens all over the world because it's an international program. And the program does not die with the transition of professional. It's built to handle exactly this one thing. Mr. Colvin and I have had explicit discussions about succession planning at Rocky Mount High School. But the tipping point is one professional gets to make one decision before we ever enact those plans. So we're prepared for the transition of any professional related to the IB program, and International Baccalaureate is built to absorb attrition and transitions exactly like what we're discussing today. But I'm not discussing the retirement of a professional in Nash-Rocky Mountain. I want to be clear. But Mr. Colvin and I have talked about contingency planning in the event that it happens midstream. So we're prepared for that. We'll be able to communicate to all of the parents. We'll be able to articulate our planning to the Board of Education, and that'll be in a public meeting. So we have considered that, and we're prepared in the eventuality that that happens.
That's great. I didn't expect an answer today. I'm just telling you there is a perception out there. And I think the sooner we can let it be known that it is our intent to continue that program, the better off we all gonna be. And that's all we intend to say about this book.
Just to that point, and to the point that our chair made earlier, when commissioners or even the average Joe Blow has a question about something or hears conversation about a question or program that we have in our district, it is better to come to the superintendent and his staff to get the information directly rather than you or whoever ask the question and then you've got to try to remember exactly what was said so that you can give correct information to this third party. What I'm saying is that more accurate information can be gathered if the information is given directly to the person who's doing the questioning And the person who is the expert on these items that we have listed here, particularly since we're talking about the IB program or any other program we might have, the most factual information is going to come from the superintendent. And we all have been around and we've heard this little thing where I say something and I tell Ann it, and Ann tells Wayne, and Wayne tells Fred, and Fred tells Robbie. And by the time it gets to Robbie, there's been a change in a word somewhere, which may actually change what I said initially. So in order to ensure that information is given out accurately and correctly, rather than you be the second party to this, if you would, as Ms. Ed suggested, direct them to the superintendent, he would be able to give them better and most accurate, up-to-date information.
I can only say that I hear what you're saying. I think y'all missed the whole point here. But
Probably so.
Apparently, hopefully, I can get with Ms. Edge and we can come to an understanding. The agenda is where that would be corrected at. As we meet every time before, we get y'all's agenda the afternoon or even the morning of the meeting. Y'all asked to get ours earlier. We sent it to you earlier this time. We didn't hear anything about the agenda, therefore we moved on with the agenda. But let Chairman Edge and myself look at that and decide maybe how to structure the agenda moving forward. I still want to have it so when we need a discussion between the two boards that it is done in this format. Certainly we can restructure how we do it. I'm not supposed to call the superintendent, and I don't call the superintendent. I talk to my manager, and then you automatically starting these he said all over again. Why not be transparent, ask the questions here? I'm not looking at an answer. I'm just making a statement of fact from our board that we recognize this to be a potential problem and leave it at that. And then when y'all are ready to report on it, report on it. But I'm gonna move on just because I feel like we're spinning the wheels on that and we can work on that. Is that fair enough? And I guess when we get to the next discussion as well, I want to make it clear, we didn't come here to discuss recent test scores and rankings today. We know y'all didn't come to bring that to us, but we want to put it on the agenda as a future item. You know, we have a lot of discussion about current expense, about the school board needing more funding. So we'll just tell you how we work. If indeed we're gonna put more funding in current expense, we got to know that we're moving up a hill, not down a hill or sideways. We are a lot more, we have made it clear that we are most interested in putting money in teacher supplements, more so than anything else, but we're also very much wanting to understand where we are with our school system, gauge. If we're gonna do it by test scores, we want to get presentations occasionally of where they stand. We're not asking for them today, we just want to put it on a future agenda. We have got some quite a bit of material that we want to pass out for you to take with you. It's some items that we had a former educator from another district to analyze certain things about our school system for us, because we don't understand this stuff. We want to give it to you what we got, and that when you're ready, come back and discuss it with us. If you want to do it in this format, I think that's the format to do it if we indeed want to be transparent about things. If you recall, I personally asked for these meetings to be structured in such a way that they weren't public meetings. Y'all chose not to do that. I think you made the right decision. You got your legal advice. And therefore we're following that advice and we're doing it in public. I think we could do better sometimes if it won't, but this is where we chose to do it, and so this is the way we operate. We all, and you've sold me on the idea. I think it's the right way to do it. I think transparency is better. But what I'd like to do is let you board members leave with one of these, copy of these documents, go through it. If they're all wrong, we want to know that. If they're right, We want to help you any way we can to improve where our school system is and our students are, because that's just what it's gonna take to keep the students in our system and keep our funding levels where they are and not continue to decline. And we are not getting in your business. We just want to let you know we're here to help you any way we can. So with that said, I'd like to just give you this to take with you, and that is concerning item number 6. And take one of each one of these with you when you go. And Dr. Jeffries.
Might be best to go ahead and go through the rest of the agenda and just let them pick up one so they
That'd be
don't get
fine.
distracted.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah, I think
If
that
that's
might-
okay. we
Because
just have to
everybody,
pick
they
up
gonna
one.
want to start looking at that.
Yeah, I realize that, but, we as Board of Commissioners are very, very interested in improving our school system. We can't do it. All we can do is fund it. But for us to be able to fund it, we've got to keep the student count up. We've got to increase the student count, and Lord knows in industrial recruitment, it's so important to be a school system that is at least getting better and not staying stagnant and not getting worse. It just affects everything we're able to do. And Mr. Chairman, you and I can discuss how I did this time, and if there's other ways better to do it, we can do it moving forward. And that's item number 6 and number 7. We are now on questions and answers, and I'll be glad to take those. I also put a copy of the statute that we are currently working under, just as a reminder for each board member to read again. We've got some things that will be changing again shortly. I just want to keep us focused on those changes, and that was the funding statute that we did some over 2 years ago now. I hope we're ready for that as we move forward, understand how it affects us, and I just think it's good at least once a year or once every 2 years in this case to take the statute, read it one more time so we'll know what's coming. And that's the reason I'm passing out a copy of that as well. But that said, we are now on questions and answers, and I would open the floor up. And don't be bashful.
I have a comment.
Ms. Wilson?
If I may. We are one community, and I think sometimes, and I have a kid in the IB program now at Rocky Mount High School, and so in some ways this is personal for me, but it's really not. Let us be careful about losing sight of the kids for the politics. We have got the myriad of problems, and when we look at I'll be interested in the data that you've got. We look at our test scores, we look at our rankings. We have a lot of community issues, I think, that need to be addressed. When we go into our schools and we work with kids, and we talk about this all the time, it's really beyond it. And this is Wendy Wilson speaking. I am a member of this board, but I'm really speaking from my own personal observations. The myriad of issues that our children and our staff, our teachers, our administrators are facing in our schools goes so far beyond the capacity of our school system. And I think it is hard for a school system to say we need help, but I don't mean we need help because we don't have the capacity to do our jobs to educate kids. I think at this point, schools generally need help from communities to be able to get to the deep-rooted issues that the children have from all backgrounds as they walk into our schools. We have them for a limited period every day. And then they go home to in some cases no food, to in some cases no housing, to some cases abuse, and in some cases all of the above. And I think, and I hope and I pray as we move forward as a community that we accept some of the challenges that we're giving each other. In other words, we're here to help, but we want to see us improving. But we're here to help. We've got to figure out how to move past some of the political divisions, some of the territorialism, because we're hurting our kids. we're hurting our community. I mean, they need us to figure out how to work together. And I understand absolutely what you're saying, Ann, in terms of communication, and I'm not, we need to figure that out too, but we need to be careful that we as two boards don't let that difficulty in communication and working through those bumps in the road prevent us from continuing to keep kids first and working towards kids. We have a weird, the way the law is structured in terms of the county commissioners funding us and the Board of Education not having its own taxing authority here, we have a really odd dynamic that makes it very difficult. But we have to be better than that for the sake of our kids. We've got to figure this out. We've got to continue to communicate. If the phone calls need to come prior to the meetings, I mean, then that needs to happen. But if we don't start on both ends, both boards stepping up and saying, look, we're here for the kids, and we got to figure out this communication thing, then we're doing our kids a disservice. And I feel like I've said this over and over again in different ways. It really disturbs me as a parent of kids in our school system, but really more as a community member looking at kids all around. So I would just challenge both boards to continue to have these difficult discussions, because without these difficult discussions, we can't get better, and to continue to push through. And in saying that, I don't want to make judgment on anybody. I don't intend to. I'm just saying, continue putting the kids first and figure it out from there. But you know, as I move and I'm headed off this board, that really worries me. I don't want us to get back to the combative nature that we had in the past. You all know I was a big person, a proponent for pushing us to meet more frequently, to be able to have these discussions. But do it in a compassionate way, so that what needs to happen beforehand happens beforehand. What needs to be on here happens in these meetings, but continue to move forward with this even through the difficult times. I'm sorry that got so long.
Quite all right. Other questions, comments, Mr. Belfield?
Yeah. I agree with you, and that's something I hope that in the future that we would do. We got challenges here. What are they? And we got to look at the situation. Why are these challenges what they are? And we identify them. We just got to come up with a plan to do it. And it's gonna, to do it and be successful, it's gonna have to go beyond the school. It's got to get out there in the neighborhoods. And I've said this to the two, where we have a committee of the commissioners that's working with you. And I've said that to them.
Yeah.
We got to look beyond the school system to solve these challenges, that the situation that we have, that we're dealing with. Why are we in the situation we're in? How can we move forward with it? And it's going, and I can tell you right now, from the way I see it, it's going to have to go beyond, also beyond the school system, out into the community.
Mr. Outlaw, did you raise your hand?
No.
I'm sorry. Anyone else? Mr. Jenkins, I don't see you best in the word. I want to make sure. All right, we'll move on from that then. We always establish our next meeting dates. I want to point out that at our, 2 times a year we meet as full boards. 2 meetings ago, we preliminary set the dates for this year, for 18. And the second meeting for 18, we set preliminary for October the 18th. Ms. Edgy, if you recall that. I wanted to remind us of that, to kind of get that date tied down. It's not going to be then. We were talking about many of us trying to get together on the same day. We normally do that at 6 o'clock in the evening. I don't know that I remember, Stacy, do you, is it our meeting to host or the school system's meeting to host?
Oh, goodness, I don't know.
Okay.
Well,
I think it's their turn.
I think it is their turn. I think we did
The
it.
18th is out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Well,
hope.
we had one at Nash Community College. Was that y'all's meeting or
That
our
was
meeting?
ours.
That
We
was
ho-
yours.
We hosted that for the budget
Okay,
presentation.
all right, so the October the 18th was a date we preliminary put out there that night at the beginning, the meeting before that meeting, just
Yes.
to try to get some dates on the calendar. If y'all would look at that and see if that's gonna work for you, and maybe go ahead and confirm that as soon as we could, or another date.
We'll get with staff and confirm
Oh,
that.
Okay, and then another date for this meeting that we're in today, could,
Hard time
assuming
getting
that
this
you,
one
assuming you're gonna come back and see us again. So you want to try to pick that date so we can put it on the calendar now? And we've been having 3 to 4 week
We're
increments.
trying to do
We've been doing them every 3 or 4 weeks.
every fourth week.
Okay,
I ring and call. It's on my phone, and by the time I look it up, the
Okay,
meeting will be
we'll do it.
gone. Yeah.
May I make a suggestion? Since we're going to meet as full boards in October, why not have this committee meeting in October, but have the next committee meeting perhaps in November, since we will be as a full board in October, which is just a month away?
well, the only thing about that is we have been trying our best to do it every 3 or 4 weeks, and we started out pretty good. We did get delayed this time for a period of time. And I think we do things here that we will not probably do. Of course, that's your meeting. You can set the agenda like you wish. We should know at that point where we're at with the school grant. That's up to all of us to decide. I would prefer to have both, but I guess I like to go to meetings.
Well, if you get the meeting too long and too many subjects, then you're gonna dilute it down and you're not going to accomplish much. So that's just a consideration that might lend you to the 2-meeting scenario, just my thinking.
You all want to defer on identifying a date of it until you all have some time to talk about it amongst the board?
Yes,
would.
please. I would. Because I'm thinking we have conference, because we'll be in, I was looking at the conferences that we have to go to, and that's November. Not even at the conference. So I'll be back. Before I leave, we will have, when we're going to meet, so I hope it's within the next couple of days.
Okay.
And then I'll have dates.
I
I was
just-
trying to look at the conferences I know that we have to attend.
If we could probably try to come to these meetings moving forward with some idea of a date, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it just works best if we leave here with a date, and I try to do that in every meeting I'm
I'll
in.
get it right back.
So you have it tied down, but we'll certainly do what you're willing to do. So you'll be back with us in a few days on that, that's
I
fine.
think we've been consistent in doing that. I just knew some conferences were coming in between the dates that we had on here.
All right, great. If there's nothing else by anyone, we stand adjourned. Thank you.